Sanbona, my name is Thulile Khanyile. I'm a scientist, social entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster. And I'm really just passionate about how we can bring technology and innovation and entrepreneurship to every corner of South Africa and every corner of the continent. So do watch the podcast. And looking forward to checking out all your comments and hopefully even meeting some of you. Ciao, ciao.
Heita Bulelani Balabala here. Welcome to the Small Business Podcast. We bring you weekly information, practical skills, and mentorship from industry professionals. This podcast is powered by T, an initiative that has directly impacted over 50,000 plus small businesses nationwide. This podcast is for small business owners who want to start, run, and grow their business. Follow us on all our social media platforms. #JoinUs4T. Every Wednesday is a new podcast. Good afternoon, good day, good morning, depending on where you're listening to the podcast today and wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Episode 18 today, the Small Business Podcast, and we're super excited because, last week we kicked off with an amazing gent, and I guess symbolic, kicking off the first week of February on the first day, with an amazing lady, Thulile Khanyile, who's a scientist, social entrepreneur, and global speaker. I met this amazing lady years ago, and we just hit it off on some program we're doing for one of the government institutions or agencies. And she's an amazing lady, and everything science, but everything unscience. And I think one of the things I've always known about her was just they found amazing ways through her personal brand, through her organizations, to make science fun, to make, science and technology fun, and to incorporate it and adopt a lot of young, amazing people to change the perceptions of what science is. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Thulile Khanyile. Man, I still say I need that hand clap, emoji thing, sound effect on the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, B.
Just tell us who you are and we're happy. Where you from?
Yeah, so like B has said, I am Thulile, but I'm Tuli. I'm originally from Durban. I'm a scientist, like he said, at least that's what I do. I'm in the sciences, I am in social entrepreneurship, and recently also podcasting as well. But yeah, the essence of it is that all things science, all things making it fresh and relatable and accessible to people who previously didn't necessarily or still don't have access to science and technology and engineering, and now even innovation, as it were. So yeah, in a nutshell.
So, okay, cool. So here you are in the science fraternity, right? How'd you get in, and when did it click that this is what you wanted to do?
Look, I think initially I had thought I wanted to be a medical doctor, right? And I was waiting for my results, and I never got into medical school. So I would then do what was called almost a first year BSc program that would enable you to then apply to medical school. But while I was doing that program, I just realized that there's being a medical doctor, and then there's the support structure of the whole medical system in its entirety. And if you think about the medical system and you think about the health system, there are people, there are drugs, there's medication, there's understanding viruses, there's understanding how things actually work. And I think I fell more in love with the discovery side of medicine. So the bug caught me around 2010 or 2009. And then in 2011, I would find myself at the CSIR, which is pretty much the largest multi-trans, intradisciplinary science research place in the continent. So it bit me then, and yeah, the rest, I suppose, is a little bit of a history.
Yeah. What are some of the early influences that helped build you up? I think as a lady, first and foremost, right? Because I think one of the things that have always jumped out to me about you is your level of confidence, your level of courage. Now, I say that on the backdrop of I've met a lot of amazing women, right? Amazing in their own right, in boardrooms, in social gatherings, in meetings and the sort. And the one of the biggest things that has saddened me is that most of the time these are innovative women that have got cutting edge, innovative ideas that have driven multinational organizations and national corporations, right? But you always find them sidelined, or you find them in the backdrop of what is needed to happen. And I think the conversation I've always had with them is, why don't you just raise your hand up a little bit higher? Why don't you just fight for your space? Because everything here is as a result of you. What were some of the early influences that sort of guided you and said, well, you've got a place and you belong?
Sure. I didn't actually know that's what you thought of me. Thank you, B. I think for me, my influences really my family. I think my dad is a very strong feature in my life. That dude's like my absolute mate. And I think, the encouragement to have a voice, to be able to debate things at home is not conventional, particularly in Black families, But for me growing up, even to this day, my dad and I will have an argument or a debate, as it were, about the state of affairs, or it could be anything. But that has always been encouraged. And I think also the militancy in my dad being a policeman is such that you have to take accountability for the things that you do, and the things that you do for you because it's your life. So you must take ownership of your life. If you want something, you must go and get it. So essentially, from that perspective, I think it's a lot about my father. And I think from my mom's perspective, or my mom's side, I'm third, fourth generation graduate at home. And my maternal side is very feminine. It has a ton of very independent, very bold women that within the spaces that they're in, they do tend to want to dominate, and they tend to want to be heard, whether it's at church, whether it's in their workplaces. So I think between my dad and the very heavy, independent thinking side of my maternal side, I think I would then come out the way that I have. Yeah.
What do you sort of feel the misconceptions are around what science is, and some of the inhibitants that don't necessarily need to be that we, I guess, as parents, we as government officials, as corporations, could sort of set out a way to allow for more younger aspirant scientists to come into the fold?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that are tangible, right? And we can talk about some of the factors that contribute to success in STEM, being having seen a person that is in the STEM fields before. It's resources, financially, experimental stuff, so infrastructure. But there's also this perception that it's not friendly, like it's not sexy to be a scientist, or it's not. There's just like this whole. It's a difficult space to be in, and you need to be this super smart person to be a scientist, which is actually not true. Or scientists actually don't make money. People don't see scientists driving around in big cars, etc. So I think there are a lot of things, but in the main, where kids are concerned, where the education system is concerned, it's that they've made science such a far-fetched thing. They've made it so inaccessible. They've made it so difficult to apply. They've made it something more theoretical than it is physical and practical. If I'm in class and I'm talking about how we're calculating velocity in grade 7 or in grade 9, the last thing you want to be telling me, if I am from a rural community, is how if you drop something on the freeway as you are driving on the highway on the first fast lane, that you understand. If I'm in a rural community, maybe I've never even seen a highway before. I don't know. Maybe at home they don't have a car. Now I'm being subjected to answer this thing based on having to use my imagination. But we could just say, something different, like if you're riding a bicycle, or let's assume that a wheelbarrow was driving at this speed and you were with your friend. There are ways of making it relatable. There are ways of making it such that it is the problem-solving tool that it is, and not necessarily this far-fetched monster that needs David to throw a sling at,
Ever since you guys started in 2017, you've been able to impact over 40,000 young, amazing people. And I think I participated in quite a number of the programs, and I found your methodologies to be super unconventional, because they tapped largely and they drove largely a huge element of entrepreneurship. And I found that as an enabler for them to be able to go out and start doing stuff and start enterprising in the community. You've created employment. And I think from a distance, just watch this organization that you guys start just shoot up amazingly so, right? Which is why you're such a huge inspiration. But tell us a bit about Nka'Thuto. What led to the start? How did it start? And how has the growth been for you?
So I think for me, I grew up very exposed, and always encouraged to sort of do things either than what was the convention in my home, which was more civic work, like teaching, etc., and policing. So that's how I got into the sciences, venturing off into something slightly different. But as I grew up, I started to realize that the opportunities that I have had were not necessarily opportunities that a lot of people are getting. And especially people that look like me and perhaps come from places that I grew up in and frequented. I don't know if that's the word.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, and at the point where I started working at the CSIR, I was very fortunate to be able to do a lot of outreach. And what outreach did was put me in places where I had to motivate young people or high school kids to participate in STEM, So when I was doing my master's and I met Thandeka, she had aspirations of Thandeka Mhlanga's my partner in the organization. When I met her, she had such a heavy interest in production. So when we both left the CSIR, she wanted to do a show. And she said, well, what she knows is science as well, because she's a physicist. And we came together to sort of, she invited me to speak at a science expo that she was running close to her home in Phumula side in the East Rand. And when I got there, I think everything just fit in together. And that day was almost like the pilot, and we sort of understood what it is we needed to do that day to support these kids in being able to participate at the time in an external expo. But when the kids that participated that day made it through to the regionals and one of them to nationals, the school came back and said, then we had to sit down and say, okay, fine, the XCOM Expo exists. How is it that we're going to be different? What do we know? And what we knew was research, and we knew research quite well. But how do you make research attractive to young people or to the average person that's not necessarily in the sciences? But also there are expos taking place, all the time. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we offer something different? And this wasn't from a value proposition perspective at the time. I'd be lying if I said it was. It was just a matter of what is going to be fit for purpose for the communities that we serve, knowing that a lot of kids that do graduate, that do finish matric, don't actually end up in university. So what do you then teach them? What skills do they need to be able to sort of participate in the economy and the growth of the economy as technology is taking over during this era? Technology knowledge is taking over in this era. So what do we do to equip young people from rural and township communities to be able to perhaps stand a better chance to propel themselves forward beyond high school? And really, that's how it came about. Yeah.
Largely so, entrepreneurship in itself is not glamorous and requires a lot of chutzpah, right? How did you find ways of sort of maintaining your entrepreneurial your entrepreneurial endeavors in check, your personal endeavors in check, and your career endeavors in check. And I think there's a narrative in and around. There's a sort of not narrative, but there's sort of a hanging question in and around: is it possible to balance, or do we all just live in organized chaos?
Look, I mean, I've sort of always been the kind of person who was sort of all over the show, even in high school. I'm very much a person who, unlike most people, likes to start. I like starting something. So, and I'm also quite okay with doing things that are seemingly unrelated. And the difficulty for a while was creating a singular story for the different aspects or the different fields or industries that I participate in.
Yeah.
So how does being a PhD student and a lecturer at WITS link into me podcasting and being a content creator? But how does that link into me being a social entrepreneur and running a nonprofit or a company, as it were? And the thing for me is, whilst it looks like they're different things, for me they aren't. All of them are propelling STEM in ways that enable STEM to contribute to the economy and enable the diverse population of South Africa in its class and tribe and geography to be able to participate in STEM, and its advancement. So really, while it looks like it's all different things, the mission and the vision of it is all related. The rest is a function of understanding what I know to be able to create the content in podcasting, and who can assist me to be able to carry that content through, or what do I need to learn for my business to thrive? What business functions do I need to know? What don't I know? How do I advance that? What kind of advisors do I get? So the rest is a function of practicality.
Now, you've won a number of awards, right? All the way from the NYDA Youth Award 2017, the KZN Youth Achiever Award recipient, and there's quite a number of them, right? But at which award sort of stood out for you and felt like, sure, wow?
So I got an award in 2015, and it was a national award in the sciences. So it's scientists being rewarded by scientists. So for me, I felt like that was acknowledgement for my capabilities to thrive and conduct research well. And that was a local one. The Obama Foundation, the Obama leaders in Africa was really fantastic for me, because it was from the front of really celebrating and acknowledging the work that I do as a social entrepreneur, so the kind of impact that I've been able to make. And in 2018, I got that. And that was awesome, because it was also an international award where you really are competing with amazing young people from all around the continent. But of late, I just received a tech woman where you spend some time in Silicon Valley, and that's coming up for me. And that for me is really awesome, because now it's competing with, leaders from the Middle East, even, from countries like Kazakhstan and, to be able to make that and be one of the 113 women selected from 4,600 applicants, I think for me is saying that beyond being regional, I think I've earned my space in the international community of STEM. Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, that's, wow. I mean, that's super inspirational, right? You guys have been able to raise, funding. You guys have been able to do super impactful work, right? Two questions construed into one. At what moment in this whole journey, whether it's at the start, whether it's current, whether it's in the middle, do you feel like, Shassi, I think this is just too much. Maybe I should just focus on my career?
Oh, all the time. Like, I don't even want to lie to you. I think what people think, I think for a very long time, we see that nonprofit organizations that really do make it in the continent are those that are not of the continental origins. So you find things like SA Aid or whatever, a lot of nonprofits that are not necessarily run by people that look like me and you know, and they make a killing. They're able to give people medical aid and et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people think just because it's a nonprofit, it's a charity. And that's not the case. It's proper business functions. When a funder doesn't give you money, you forfeit your salary to be able to pay your employees. It's a lot of work, you know, and you still have to account to every single donor for every last cent that you've got, you know. So it's actually every day you're just like, ooh, kodwa thandeka nathi sasenzani, you know, type of thing. But I think the need. The need and the gap for the work that we do is so loud in the continent and in South Africa as well. You know, it's so loud. We just can't stop. It's not an option.
Yeah. And I think for me, I mean, you definitely shouldn't, because I think of the work I've done with you, I think there's actually two students who still DM me till today of their achievements. And I think that just speaks to creating an ecosystem, because what you guys have built up is an ecosystem, right? In and around the students, how they're able to interact with community, and then how you guys sort of drive that, right? But latching on to the previous question, you know, at what point did you sort of feel like, Shasi, man, I've made it, or I'm making it, like I'm killing this?
I think I'm never gonna feel like I'm making it, but I can tell you that when we see our kids now being fourth year at university, or we see our kids sending us proposals for their own businesses, when we see Tepiso, my word, when we see Tepiso from Tembisa now going on to be able to spend 8 months or a year overseas, or Milton from Polokwane having a certificate from the University of Pennsylvania through a program that we introduced him to, or when we see our kids now graduating and starting companies, or we see kids that we've taught how to code and given them or prized them or given them prizes for their achievements in laptops, and we see those kids teaching themselves how to code, and some of them are now making their own beats and selling the beats, you know, and you can just see the wiring that they are now in possession of. And when we speak about have we sort of made it, not by a long shot, but I think what is encouraging is that they, from where they come from, with the backgrounds they have, are making it.
Sure. Now, just give me an idea, right? What does a typical day look like? You know, you're a podcaster, sure, social entrepreneur. Yes, man, you've got this full-on career. You're in the not even just a day, right? But I think that's too broad of a question. But what routine do you live by, if there's any, that sort of just keeps your mind aligned and kicks off your day, or just ends off your day, you know?
I don't know if I have any other routine outside of this is what I'm going to do today.
Sure.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to do today. And I put down a list to say I have to. And, you know, like if you look at my diary, it's PhD. Then I have the things I have to do for my PhD. Then it's podcast, call this person, secure this guest, you know, move this to this date, you know, and then I've got my nonprofit stuff, and you're talking about, you know, what proposal you have to write to who, what kind of strategic partnerships you have to have. So and to be quite honest, without me continuously having in my head that everything I do is for the same cause, I really would go mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really would go mad. But I don't even want to lie to you. I don't have, I mean, there was a time where I used to work absolutely all the time until I realized it wasn't sustainable. This is about like 2-3 years ago, and I realized it's not sustainable. So I need to get help. I need to, if I can do something, I'm going to do it. If I can't do it, I'm not gonna do it. You know, there are more important things than life than meeting deadlines. Funny enough, there's family, there's my health, there's my well-being, there's me going to the gym, there's me being a 30-something-year-old female who feels like she has to look good, and I do my nail appointments and my lash appointments and my hair appointments. So all of that Tuli the person, I've now put at the center of pretty much everything. And if Tuli isn't well, it's a disservice to everything else. So when I'm running around like a headless chicken, like I used to do before and working all the time, it doesn't service my beneficiaries at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Tuli, just give me an idea. So I don't know whether to even say at this point we've gone through a pandemic. There was a height to it, which was crazy, which was shocking and ridiculous. I mean, I think for me, it threw me back the first couple of months, seeing emails just postponed, delayed, week declining, postponed, delayed, declining, and then just going into the first 3 months of just frustration to just this sort of somber attitude. How was it for you, right?
Well, I sort of knew it was going to go on for a long time, but I didn't think the lockdown was going to be for so long, you know, because being in the industry of virology, I mean, we know how we know that viruses will mutate, and we know that they'll change their behavior, and they'll change how they interact with people, and how people interact with the virus will change as well. So we sort of knew from off the bat from the lab that, oh, this is going to be a while. We put it at like about 2 to 3 years. But I didn't think the lockdowns were going to be so long. So that was uber frustrating. I couldn't do anything actually for about 2 months. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm tools down, you know, and it's only after like 2 months or like about a month or 6 weeks or so that I was like, oh, okay, this thing's not going anywhere. It's going to be the new norm. Let's figure things out. You know, what do I do? Because now I can't go into the lab for my PhD. At the time, I hadn't started podcasting. But what we could do is continue running the program. We continued to run the Nka'Thuto program. We were able to, as soon as, I think it was around June 2020, where they said, you know, people can now go out, but not in masses. And we try to provide our kids with devices so that we're able to run the program online. And we ran the program online, and we were able to do it as a very small team. And it was great, you know, it was great in that we didn't have to stop. I mean, of course, you know, the economic implications of the lockdown and COVID itself are such that we would lose funding because a lot of our funders are maybe losing market share. So their dividends are maybe smaller. So then it means that they are perhaps reviewing as well their core funding strategies, or they're not funding certain people anymore. And we got caught in that as well, where we lost our major funder during that time, you know. So it was absolutely frustrating. I don't want to lie. Very.
And how do you deal with rejection?
You move on, hey. I'm so sorry to say that it's like it's so plain, but you move on. Now, I think I've had so many rejections in my life. It's like sometimes people like to say, sure, you know, you're always getting these awards. And I'm like, for each award that you see, or for each international trip that I do, or every conference that I do, there's probably like 20 that said, oh, actually, we think you suck. You know what I'm saying? Or you're not the perfect fit, you know? But the reality of the matter is that I think because I was bullied as well in primary school, like I was bullied quite a lot in primary school, my parents had to sort of build the confidence in myself at that particular point, and have me learn that just because someone is saying something of you doesn't mean that you are that. It is their perception of you, and you've got no control over it.
Are you sometimes caught off by the imposter syndrome? where you find yourself in places with people that you've always just idolized. You know, I think my introduction to a gentleman, an amazing gentleman, right, a struggle stalwart, Bob Rumlangen, was through you. So I sort of sit there and I'm like, do you ever sit there and pinch yourself like, what am I doing here? Right. And how do I sort of align my mind back to, I deserve to be here?
So I don't look at things from a position of deserving. I look at things from a position of singla. Yabo. I don't want to. I mean, sometimes I do question. Hey, you know, like the Obama leaders, for example, they are ministers of, ministers of different countries and people who write for presidents in Kenya, and you look at it and you think to yourself, sure, I wonder how I made it here. Even now when I read the profiles of other tech women that I'm going to the States with, I'm like, sure, these people are doing some hectic stuff, Yeah. But it is never gotten me to a point where I've said, hey, I shouldn't be here. I'm here now. Let's move. What can I learn from these people? Who are they? Before I go into a room and I know who's going to be there, I literally research people quite a lot. Also because one of my things is I want to be in the room where I'm the least smart. I want to be in a room where I'm least knowledgeable. Because that's when I learn a lot. And that's when I get the opportunity to be quiet, because everybody in that room knows that, hi, Ilona, she's just a student, So, but Bona, they are like really big. So it's like, I don't have the pressure to have the answers. As soon as I'm in a room and I have the pressure to have the answers, I know that, okay, I shouldn't necessarily be in these spaces a lot. I want to be in spaces where I am listening, where I'm asking the questions, where I'm doing the observing and not the other way around. And I really do learn a lot from that. It really does mature me. So I don't know necessarily about never feeling like I'm not deserving.
One superpower I've picked up about you is your amazing networking abilities. This lady, I mean, something I've observed, right, through our interactions, through watching you interact with people. Where'd you get that from, right? And because I asked this question deliberate for the sort of professionals that are listening to this, the academics, the entrepreneurs, because networking is an important part of any career growth, right? Any entrepreneurial or business growth, right? How did you perfect it in the way in which you've done it? Because I know for a fact you've perfected it in how I've seen you engaging with other professors and doctors, entrepreneurs, your stakeholders in an impeccable and amazing way.
So for me, I think everyone is a human being. Everyone from the people who help us in the lab, to the people who help us in our homes, to the president of a country. Everyone is a human being, and I think at the most basic level, people want you to connect with them as people, and we can learn from people everywhere. It doesn't matter what level they're at, what industry they're in. So my approach to people is, I want to know who you are. I want to know who you are. I want to greet you. I want to find out how many children you have, if it's something that you're keen to talk about. But really, it's just I speak to people from the level of being a human being, and that they are human beings as well. And I've found that assists me a lot. I also don't ask people for stuff. I try not to ask people for stuff unless I absolutely have to. I want to build relationships and understand who people are, and have them get to a point where they are interested in me without me shoving my profile in their faces without them asking, because that's when your profile doesn't get read. So that's just, I approach it as it's a person, it's a human being, and I want to connect with them.
Do you have mentors? And if you do, how do you sort of identify who will mentor you in what and support you in what way?
I'm the CEO of my company, and my company is my first company is me.
Yes.
And I understand
I like that. Continue, sorry.
and I understand business functions. And I understand that for a business to run, these functions must run. But there's no way that as an individual, I understand and can be in control of all of these functions, right? So then I go and I find out where am I lacking? What do I need to do? Who knows how to do this? And the way I find out who knows how to do this is by talking about it. I'll say, I will meet you, B, and I'll be like, I'm looking for a person who can, I don't know, like right now, for example, I'm looking for a person who could better curate my content for the podcast on the back end. But I'm telling people that that's what I'm looking for, right? So chances are, if a person bumps into someone who does that, they'll come back and they'll say, well, Tuli is looking for that. And I used the same stance with my mentors. I mean, I've got a mentor, Dr. Kulumbata, who actually is the one that introduced me to Ubabu Mlangeni.
Yeah.
And the way I found him was I said, I had just come back from Tanzania to understand some of the liberation struggle of South Africa and the connections with Tanzania. And I came back and I said, I am clueless about the state of the country and I need to understand this political landscape, because how do you function without understanding the political landscape of a country? And I deliberately said, I want a person who's in the political space, and I'm going to find them and they're going to mentor me in understanding politics and the political climate in as far as it relates to business and advancing my agenda in society. Or then I will say, I need a female who is in a very powerful position so that I understand how as a female you navigate in a male-dominated industry. So I'm specifically looking for a person who sits on boards and finds themselves to be the lone decision maker as a female. And I want to watch them move. I don't even have to speak to them. I just want to watch them move. Can they allow me to just watch them move and watch their demeanor and watch how they interact, with the people around them? So it's very much linked to what I need at that particular time. And then I'm going to be very loud about it to the people I know until I find the perfect fit for that department of my business that needs to grow.
Sure. Second last question. Not necessarily what inspires you, right? But what inspirational advice or structural or strategic advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh.
If you had such, like that one thing you sit here, you're like, as if I did more of that. Or if you could just tune, not to necessarily say change your journey, but do more of this because you're stronger than that. Because I sort of feel like when I was young, I could have been more confident. I had a very low self-esteem, I
think I could be less critical of myself. I think I could be more relaxed, less hard on myself. I even now tend to be very hard on myself, and I think sometimes it limits my ability to move and do things sometimes. This is I don't know if this almost sounds contradictory to everything that has been the way that this interview has been going, but the reality of the matter is that I really am hard on myself. Like if I get asked a question at a conference and I don't know it, I'm just like, I should have known that. You understand? How could I not have looked up the requirements for this thing? Like, Thulile, like obviously you could have done better. Like obviously you could have prepared for this. Why didn't you? So I do tend to be very hard on myself. So I think my imposter syndrome is with me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, to an entrepreneur, a graduate, a student, anyone who's listening to this podcast, what advice would you like to share?
Take the opportunities. Take them. Because what I have learned is that I am a function today of everywhere I've been, everyone I've met, everything I've done, the negative and the positives. especially the negatives, because that's where I learned the most, especially the challenges, because that's where I learned the most and built my personality, and had a lot more talking points and, participating in a variety of things and not limiting yourself whilst you feel like it might be counterintuitive is what the world of today wants.
Yeah.
It wants people who are multifaceted. It wants people who are scientists and are in the lab, but at the same time understand the bottom line of a business and how it is they can get that business to meet its bottom line. So whatever conversation you can have with anyone, like ebhasini, estimeleni, talk to people, learn, be interested in other people more than you are in having other people be interested in you. So for me, it's just take the opportunities, have all the chats, meet all the people, go to all the places you can go to, and speak to everyone, the gogo, the whoever. Just talk to people and perfect the skill of communicating, because that's going to advance you in so many ways, in ways you'll never be able to imagine.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is an amazing lady by the name of Thulile Khanyile, a scientist, social entrepreneur, and global speaker. And I'm happy to say my friend. So we've got all her details and her bio on the podcast blurb and on YouTube on the blurb at the bottom. Look her up, follow the work, research them if you're a sponsor, funder, donor. The amazing work they're doing with Nka'Thuto will blow you away. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your super busy day. Siyabonga, thank you.
Thank you so much. Ngiyabonga nami.
Thank you. That's it for today. If you like that podcast, show us some love and share it with your network. Once again, follow us on all of our social media platforms, #JoinUsForTea, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Shout out to Joe Public for making this possible. Remember, Sisonke Rikaufela and Foster Njengomzegezege.